Tell me more about your first farm.
A farm come for sale in the village. I went to the bank, and of course they showed me the door pretty quickly. However, by this time I'd got Sunday paper rounds because they wasn't classed as being an occupation, and I used to take 3 villages out on a Sunday, start at 6 o'clock in the morning and go to Gainsborough Central Station with a lorry my dad lent me, and pick up the papers and drop them off for different villages on the way back. And I could make £3. And I gave this to my wife for quite a few years when I first got married to keep house on. However, going back to this council house with this little farm, I went to fetch my papers one Sunday, and the different people who sold me them, one chap, he was the agent for the Halifax Building Society for all Gainsborough in his front room. And he said, "You look a bit miserable this morning, Stan." And so I related to him how I'd been to the bank. And he turned around and he says, "Well, I'll see what I can do for you." Then he got me £2,000 without any job or anything. And then luckily, Muriel's mother lent me £2,000. So I got my farm bought. Anyway, I got, I don't know, 300 or 400 day-old chickens in the coal house. I thought, well, they'll do for deep litter at the farm, and these chickens kept growing, and the farmer wouldn't let me move into this farm till we'd completed. And these chickens, of course, kept jumping into the neighbours' gardens, and the council kept sending me letters saying that give me notice if I didn't get rid of all these chickens. However, I thought, well, another fortnight and I shall be rid of those chickens all right. And so I managed to keep in the house and move them down to the farm when we moved in. This farm was in the village, and I was from a fairly large family, seven of us, and I needed to be out of the family's way because, as families do, they do get a bit antagonistic when there's so many of you in a small space. However, I moved into this village and into this village farm and got going, and one thing that stands in my mind very much was, and I could never understand why, but Muriel didn't like feeding these chickens. But that's my wife, and she seemed to not want to do it, and anyway, we got over that one. And we started growing and bunching red beet. That's how we got into the red beet trade. And
can you remember what year that was?
well, I'm just looking up my notes because my memory's not quite as good as it used to be. 1.5 acres of 1.25 acre of red beet, 1950. So that's when we started growing red beet, and we used to bunch them. And somehow I got in contact with somebody in Sheffield Market, and 2 young men, and they wanted someone to supply them with something, and they didn't know what, and I didn't know what. I wanted to send them, and we chatted about it. And they said, "Well, why don't you boil some red beet?" So I thought, oh, that's a good idea. And I went and bought a pressure cooker and a barrel which you could put the beet in and fasten up, and started growing and pre-packing red beet. This was all quite interesting because I had to find somebody that made plastic bags and fasteners. It was all quite exciting in those days, and when nobody else was doing this. And by this time I'd got a van, and I used to go off to Sheffield Market at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning with a load of pre-packed red beet and take them to the market and get back home by about 7 o'clock. And we continued to do this, but the problem was there was no such thing as refrigeration in those days, and in the hot weather when you wanted the beetroot to keep, there was no way of making it keep. And I used to take it into the market on a Thursday morning. We used to pack it on the Wednesday on the farm, but by Saturday it had grown white whiskers. And so we soon got more sent back than we took to the market.
If you were to give any words of advice to young people wanting to get into farming today, what would it be?
Probably a big mistake by not getting advice. And this is the big danger of anybody that I would say was starting. Don't think you know it all. And the older I've got, the more questions I've asked, I've found. When you're young, you don't ask questions, you think you know it all.